For some days, we were exploring the sublime paradox of having arrived and yet perpetually becoming, or no longer being a seeker and yet still having the experiences of life, or being still and yet always in the movement of existence. And out of this has arisen a question. What is it that arises? What qualities are there that are present when these two have been reconciled? When they come together seamlessly in us, like time and timelessness and stillness and movement. And there's a Sufi story that perhaps will allow us to recognize what one of these qualities is. But first, unlike usually, there's a little explanation, although we know the way of Sufi stories. In this story, Mawjud means present, being present, being aware, or in its deeper sense, being present in the present. And Qadir, who is called the Green One in Sufi terms, like the Prophet Elijah and the Buddha and all other chosen ideals, is a representation of our inner self, our divine self, our God self. So let's see what this story brings up with these awarenesses as to what one of the qualities are that come when there's a reconciliation between having arrived and yet perpetually experiencing and in the movement of life. Mawjud was his name, and Mawjud was a petty official in the Department of Weights and Measures in a country in the Middle East. Now he was just an ordinary man going to his office every day, day after day, undertaking the tasks that were related to weights and measures. When one day Mawjud was walking out in the garden, and suddenly Qadir appeared to him and said, "Meet me by the river in 3 days' time." Now Mawjud had an awareness of this, so he went to his officials and he said, "I have to leave this office." Well, they all thought he was mad because jobs were few and far between at that time in that place. But there were many who were hankering after his position, so they soon forgot about what it might be that was sending Mawjud out of his position. So after 3 days, Mawjud went down to the river, and sure enough, there he met Qadir. And Qadir said to him, "Rend your clothing and jump into the river. Something will happen." So without a thought or a moment's hesitation, Mawjud discarded his clothing and jumped into the fast-moving river. Fortunately, he could swim, so he did not drown, but he was carried far down the river by its force, until, as it happened, there was a little cove, and in that cove there was a fisherman with his nets, and he was able to throw a line to Majud and haul him in. And the fisherman said, "What are you doing in the river?" And Majud said, "Well, I really don't know." The fisherman said, "Oh, you must be a madman. But anyway, come back and I'll feed you and dry you off." And so when Majud was taken back to the fisherman's house, and after having a bowl of soup and having some clothes given to him, the fisherman learned that Majud was an educated man. He could read and write, and the fisherman could not. So a bargain was made that the fisherman would help Majud to make a living, and Majud would teach him how to read and write. So Majud stayed there for some while, and he learned the ways of fishing, whilst he taught the fisherman how to read and write. But then one night, Kadir came to him once again and said, "Go from this place, follow the road, something will happen." So Majud, now wearing his fisherman's garb, went off down the road. And he hadn't gone too far when a farmer came by with a cartload of goods that he was taking to the market. And he accosted Majud and he said, "Are you looking for work? I need someone to help me in the market with my goods." So Majud said yes. So he became an assistant to the farmer. And he stayed there for some while, and he learned the ways of the land. He learned how to till. He learned the ways of agriculture. But then again, just as he was becoming settled in his role, and in fact the farmer's daughter had fallen in love with him, again Kadir came to Majud and said, "Go to Mosul and become an assistant to a trader who is there." So Majud set out on the road to Mosul, and there indeed he did find the trader who was wanting help. And so he became the assistant of the trader. Well, learning the ways of commerce, he earned quite a lot of money. And he'd accumulated an amount which had brought to him the thought that he might settle down and buy himself a house. But then Kadir came to him once again and said, "Give away your money and go to Samarkand, where you will find a grocer there. Go and take up employment with him." And so this is what Majud did. He set off on the road to Samarkand. When he arrived there, he found the grocer and became a helper in the shop. By this time, Majud was showing the marked signs of illumination, wisdom. And people who came into the shop began to recognize that he had knowledge beyond that of ordinary men. Even scholars and pundits would come to pass the time of day with him. And then they asked him the question, "Who was your teacher?" And Majud would answer, "Well, I really didn't have a teacher." Well, how did you come to this knowledge and wisdom? And Majud said, "Well, I used to be an employee in the Office of Weights and Measures, and then I jumped into the river and I learned the ways of being a fisherman, and then I went to stay with a farmer and learned the ways of the land. And then I became a trader and learned a lot of money, and then I gave it away, and now I'm here." But people used to scratch their heads and say, "Well, from where did you glean all of this knowledge and wisdom?" And Majud would shake his head and answer, "Well, I really don't know." But Majud became very famous. People came from far and wide to this grocer's shop, and he had quite a following. But we well know the ways of mankind. They began to make stories, make up stories about his life, because in the ways of men, it is mostly necessary for them to give attributes and qualities to those of wisdom when they themselves are seekers. But the question that's asked is, what have we discovered? What would you recognize as the quality that you now find in your life and can be recognized in this story of Majud, one who has presence, who is present in the present? What is the quality that you would recognize in this story that we ourselves have in the reconciliation of ceasing the seeking and yet living our life with these experiences in perpetual, endless movement that is life? What is this quality? When you're baking a cake and something inside of you says, "Pick up the phone and ring your sister," do you drop the stirring of the cake and go and pick up the phone? I do. When there's a stirring in you, get in the car and go down to the shopping centre, have a cup of coffee. Do you put down your wash rags and wash your face and get in the car and go down to the coffee shop and meet someone there? Do you? Right on. Isn't that it? Isn't that it? And what's that in a word? What's that quality that we can now give a name to? When?
Intuitiveness.
Yes. What else? Intuition, we know.
Trust in our own self.
Yes.
Presence.
Yes, present. Absolutely. We have to be present to be aware of it, isn't it? Because it's not out there when our mind is thinking about what we're doing tomorrow, or not there. It's only in the present that we have that voice, isn't it?
Well, being accurate.
Yes. No, I would give it another name if you don't mind my imposing my experience on it. It's obedience. I don't, no question. So it's like saying, if God tells me to do something, I do it without question. No matter how hard or easy it might seem, whether you've still got sand between your toes because you've been out in the garden and it says go to the coffee shop. You see what I'm saying? Isn't it? Isn't it like that for us? You bet it is. So we recognize it. And when we recognize it as this quality, we have to accept that those have been reconciled. We're no longer a seeker, perpetually trying to keep up with life. We're still inside. Intuitive awareness, and the experiences of life come along, we respond, and there it is. Because out of that, we recognize when we get down to the coffee shop and we meet that person who's sitting there that we need to talk to, this is the miracle. 5 minutes later it would have been too late, they would have gone home. Isn't it? Now. Sorry, I didn't mean to be thumping the table and being a teacher.